Good evening, and welcome to the Marian Minor Cook Athenaeum. My name is Michael Grauske, and I am one of this year's Ath Fellows. Few individuals have exerted a greater influence on the course of American history than Frederick Douglass. Born in 1818, he overcame insurmountable odds, teaching himself to read and escaping from slavery to become one of the foremost anti-slavery activists of all time. His most famous work, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, published in 1845, was instrumental in conveying the horrors of slavery to the American public. In the words of Margaret Fuller, a prominent literary critic of the era, everyone may read his book and see what a mind might have been stifled in bondage, what a man may be subjected to the insults of spendthrift dandies or the blows of mercenary brutes. Tonight's guest, Darius Wallace, will reconstruct the complexity and radiance of Frederick Douglass's spirit, leadership, and march toward freedom. Mr. Wallace is a renowned actor, writer, and director from Memphis, Tennessee, who began his acting career with the Michigan Shakespeare Festival. He has traveled across the United States as a solo performer, interpreting the lives of civil rights leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Langston Hughes, and Frederick Douglass, and he currently works with the Tennessee Shakespeare Company and the Orpheum Theater in Memphis, Tennessee. Mr. Wallace is a graduate of SUNY Purchase University and is the owner of Circle 7 Production Company, which is dedicated to creating inspirational stories for film, television, and theater through plays, screenplays, and solo works. He is currently in post-production on his own movie, 100 Lives, which he wrote, directed, and produced. As always, I must remind you that audio and visual recording is prohibited. Please welcome Darius Wallace to the Athenaeum.
Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land, tell Pharaoh that my people. I look into the stars, and I think to myself, what wonder those stars. I imagine the stars, then look back to me, only to say, what wonder this star. Indeed, stars we are all, and all like stars we fall. There's a divinity that shapes our ends, rough, hew them how we will. I've been often and utterly astonished since I've come north to find persons who could speak of the singing among slaves as evidence of their happiness and contentment. It is impossible to conceive of a greater mistake, for slaves sing most when they are most unhappy. The song of the slave represents the sorrow of his heart, and he is relieved by them as an aching heart is relieved by its tears. I've come back to my old slave quarters for 4 reasons. 1, to address you, for I hear some of you are planning on migrating north, thinking there you'll experience greater freedom. But I'll assure you, there's no more freedom there than here, only a different kind of slavery. If someone can give you your freedom, then someone can take freedom away from you. 2, to rediscover my purpose after fighting slavery. Even though that document called the Emancipation Proclamation is signed, we must be watchful of what new skin the snake will shed, what new type of machine it will become, what new beast will devour our countrymen. We are still not free. And 3, to discover who my father is. Most of my young life, I've had one man or another over me. And in each instance, I've wondered if he were my progenitor, the cause of my existence. And 4, to address my former slave master with choice words before I kill him. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I was born on Colonel Lloyd's slave plantation in Talbot County, Maryland. My mother was Harriet Bailey. My father was, I don't know who my father was. I only saw my mother 4 or 5 times, and that was at night. She worked on another plantation, and she would walk 20 miles to hold me at night, and she was gone by daybreak. I was raised by my grandmother, Miss Betsy Bailey, an old settler of sorts. She was held in high esteem, far higher than most colored persons in slave states. Oh, I don't know, 'cause I was too old for field service, or because I so faithfully performed my duties early in life. I don't know. All I know is I enjoyed the high privilege of living in the cabin, separate from the slave quarter, with no other burden than taking care of all the children round the plantation. You know, the plantation was so poor that even the slave master's children had to come to get old grandma's gifts. Yes, I was famous for making nets for catching fish. And not only was I famous for making the nets, I was also famous for catching the fish. We eat good too. We eat baked fish, fried fish, good eating, the dyed fish, black fish, white fish. Ain't nothing but catfish. We eat fish, you hear me? And sweet potatoes. I'd be out there, sometimes half day. While it was said some of the slave masters would be out there all day. Even they had to come to get them some fish to feed their families. Yes, I took care of all the children around the plantation, including little Freddie. Little Freddie. The boy's mother, my daughter, come running up to me one day talking about she pregnant. I say, you are? I say, well, how you go about doing that, baby? She say she didn't know. I say, you don't know? What, you think the wind just blew up your dress and you're pregnant? Your name ain't Mary, and you sure ain't no virgin, so we knows how you got pregnant. Poor child had to walk 10 miles to and fro to work on another plantation. We rarely saw her. She died young of a fever. So I took care of little Freddie. Freddie! 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 Freddie, if you don't get your high yellow behind up here, it'll be a cold day in Lucifer's backyard if I don't beat all the black that's left on you. You've been playing in the chicken coop, haven't you? Didn't I tell you not to play in the chicken coop? Didn't I tell you not to play in the chicken coop? Now you get in there right now, you get grandma's net so we can go out and go fishing. Yeah, being a black boy, I don't get in trouble with the white boys get in trouble for. No, sir, I don't get in trouble for eating my fork and knife wrong because we ain't got no fork and knives. I don't get in trouble for eating my tablecloth dirty because we eat our meals on the floor. And I don't get in trouble for getting my clothes dirty because my clothes are already dirty. I ain't got no mama. I ain't got no daddy. I get to be as bad as I want to be. I get to play with the roosters. Coo, 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 coo. I get to play with the horses. I get to play with the cows. Boo. I didn't get to play with the chickens. I love imitating chickens. What's your name, girl? Kamaya. You like chickens? Well, Kamaya, I can walk like a chicken. Kamaya, I can talk like a chicken. Walk, buck, 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 buck. I can peck my neck in the ground like a chicken. Buck, buck, buck. And Kamaya, I get to eat the chickens. I runs wild. They call me Little Chicken Fred, but my grandmama don't like it though. She say she don't want me to go be a chicken who's a scaredy cat. I don't want to go be no chicken who's a scaredy cat, because I don't like cats. But I love chickens, and one day I was running from my grandmama, and it seemed like she pulled out this brown leather belt, and she began flashing at me like lightning. But she couldn't catch me though, because playing with chickens taught me how to run fast. I'd run through her legs, I'd jump over her shoulders, I'd run around her, and then one day I was running from my grandmama, and it seemed like her fist grew long and traveled faster than the horse of the hearing sound of a gunshot. And when I saw what was coming from my face, it was my grandmama's big black fist knocking me to the black of the nights. But when I woke up, I would often overhear her telling me stories. And one story she'd tell me, it's a famous story, and it's all about an eagle who thought he was a chicken too. Amen. 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 One day, an eagle's egg was playing in a nest of chickens. And one day, the eaglet hatched, and he looked around and he saw he was surrounded by all these little chickens. So the eagle, he began to act like a chicken. The eagle began to walk like a chicken. The eagle began to talk like a chicken. The eagle pecked his neck in the ground like a chicken and flew only a few feet off the ground like a chicken. But one day, the eagle grew up and he looked into the sky and he saw a speck. And that speck became a ball, and that ball became a bird. And that bird became a huge beast flying in the sky, soaring in the winds. And the eagle, who thought he was a chicken, said to his neighbor who was a chicken, "Ooh, what kind of bird is that? I want to be just like him." But his friend said, "Oh, that's an eagle, the king of the birds, but don't you give it a second thought. You'll never be like him." So the eagle never ever gave it a second thought, and he died one day still thinking he was a chicken. What a tragedy. Built to soar in the heavens, but spent the rest of his life flying only a few feet off the ground. Freddie, never settle for less than the best, and always be the best you can be. Amen. 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 I was a strong influence on that boy. Well, unfortunately, the time came for little Freddie to be taken away from me. I want Jesus to walk with me. See, the slave master had need of some more slaves on another plantation, and they wanted to take little Freddie from me. He had brothers and sisters over there he didn't know. I want Jesus to walk with me. I had to keep the sad fact from him that he was going, or there would have been no keeping him, so I got him up early one Sunday morning, and I put him on my back and told him we'd go for a walk in the woods. And after walking about 10 miles, he would hold on to my hand so tight. I was afraid of everything. I often think logs to be wild beasts and trees to be monsters, but I would hold on to his hand tight, and I would sing to him to calm him down. I'm on this lonesome journey. I want Jesus promise to walk with me. And I pushed him out into the woods, and I told him to go on and play with your little brothers and sisters. It'll be okay. And like all little boys, he ran on and played, and it was the last smile I saw on little Freddie's face. While he was playing and having a good time, I made my way back out into the woods before he could see me, but it wasn't long before I could hear him crying after me, "Grandmama, Grandmama, I want my grandmama. Where's my grandmama? I want my grandmama. Where's my grandmama?" And I never ever saw my grandmother again. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Long ways from home. Long ways from home. I did not as a child understand the deep meaning of those songs. I myself was within the circle, so that I neither saw nor heard what those without might see and hear. They told a tale of woe that was then altogether beyond my feeble comprehension. They were tones loud and long and deep. They breathed the prayer and complaint of souls boiling over with the bitterest anguish. Every tone was a testimony against slavery and a prayer to God for deliverance from chains. To those songs, I give credit to my first understanding of the dehumanizing character of slavery. I cannot get rid of those songs. They follow me even to this day to deepen my hatred of slavery and quicken my sympathy for my brethren in bonds. If anyone wishes to understand the dehumanizing character of slavery, let him go down to Colonel Lloyd's plantation at high noon and place himself in the deep pine woods, and there, in silence, let him analyze the sounds that shall fill the chambers of his soul. If he's not thus impressed, it will only be because there is no flesh in his obdurate heart. In the American slave system, there's no marrying to establish family. There's no education to establish skill and learning, and the light of the gospel shut out from the dark mind of the bondman, and him forbidden by law to learn to read. If a mother shall teach her daughter to read, the state of Virginia proclaims she shall be hanged by the neck. In the state of Texas, if a father shall teach his son the knowledge of letters, he shall be killed by the discretion of the court. 3 million people shut out from the light of knowledge. 3 million people shut into the darkness of ignorance. 3 million people that are bound by the chains of evil that can only result from such a state of things. But I am bound by the prayers and the tears and the supplications of 3 millions of my countrymen, and will bargain with no man connected to the American slave system whatsoever, I shall expose slavery. To expose it is to kill it. I am to slavery what the light of the sun is to the root of a tree. When the roots are exposed, it must die under it. The only thing the slave master wants from me is silence. The only thing he wants from me is ignorance on the subject. But what I want is for the American slave system to be surrounded by howling walls of fire so the slave master can read his own condemnation and his system come tumbling down in flaming letters of light. I wonder what the coward show. He knows I'm here. I have so many words of hatred overflowing in me. I can still feel the bloody whip on our back and hear our cries. Maybe if I can just attack him with my words, maybe to prevent. My old friend, Barney, a horseman, a good and smart and valuable slave. There was a condition between slave and slave master that would change my life forever. I love horses. There's something peaceful about the presence of a horse. Y'all love horses? Do y'all love horses? You ever rode a horse? You better learn. It hurts your buttocks at first. But a buttocks is like an excuse. Everybody's got one. What's your excuse, Freddie? Why ain't you been over here helping me with my horses? In this life, you're going to have to work. See, when you work, you get good at something. When you get good at something, you become valuable. And when you become valuable, you become irreplaceable. You got to work with your whole heart. Put all your passion into it. Then you become a miracle worker, see? And you will get beat by the whip. But you will get up. I get beat. I get up. For he who was willing to get up will be helped up. But he who was not willing to get up will be left to stay down. And when you get tired, you sing. Remember that song I taught you, boy? What's that they're playing in the mud? Pigs, Barney, pigs, yeah. What's that they're flopping out the water? Fish, Barney, fish, yeah. What's that bird flying high in the sky? Eagle, Barney, eagle. Your grandmama told you about the eagle who died thinking he was a chicken. That ain't no story, boy. Mine isn't as much different. See, when the eagle grew up, he looked to the sky and he saw this big old brown beautiful bird flying in the sky, soaring in the wind. And when the big old brown beautiful bird saw the eagle playing with the chickens, he said, "Hey there, young fella, what you doing down there with all them chickens? Why don't you come on up here with me and fly high in the sky and soar in the winds?" But the eagle, who thought he was a chicken, said, "Buck, buck, 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 buck. Excuse me, sir, you're greatly mistaken. I am a chicken." But the big old brown bird laughed. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo. The devil is a lie. You are an eagle. Why, look at your big old brown feathers. Help protect you when you're flying close to the sun. And woo, look at your big old brown wings. Help you power yourself up here. And woo, look at your big old feet. Help you catch your prey, and your fierce eyes help you have great vision." Well, the chicken, or the eagle, or one of the chickens said, "Don't listen to the big old brown bird in the sky. He's lying to you. Besides, nobody is allowed to fly any higher than any of us can fly. You are a chicken. You're just a deformed chicken. That's the reason why you look the way you do." Well, in this moment, the eagle, who thought he was a chicken, had to make a choice. He could choose to believe he was an eagle, or he could choose to believe he was a chicken. And there was a sense of freedom in the choice. So he chose to believe he was an eagle. And he flapped his wings and flew high and high and grew stronger and stronger and flew high in the sky to live his proper destiny. Barney! Yes, sir? Barney! Coming, sir. Oh, Barney was a good slave. He was well skilled with horse medicines, and he could remove nampers from horses' mouths. He got presents from me, but he also got stripes. as well, for nothing was more intolerable than the mismanagement of my horses. Their beds must be softer and cleaner than some of my human cattle. And if Barney or any other slave would have mismanaged my horses, they must stand in front of me, hat in hand, lips sealed, never answering a word. This is how you make a slave. This is how you control a slave. It is necessary. Every great civilization has had its slaves. It is within their nature to work out in the heat of the day. It is within their nature to obey the slave master. How is it that I, who am one, can control they who are many? I make order out of chaos. I do this by dividing up the plantation. Light slaves work in the house. Dark slaves work in the field. Aged slaves do minor chores, and children slaves make for good playmates. Male slaves are bred to female slaves to make more slaves, and the system is in place for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. There is much profit in the body of a slave. Why should I destroy my profit? They're not allowed to trust one another. They're only allowed to trust me. This is why I don't destroy my profit. This is a good business. But every now and then, I have to keep my profits in line. Barney, take off your hat. Yes, sir. Barney, take off your jacket also. Yes, sir. Barney, down on your knees. Excuse me, sir? Down on your knees. My old feeble knees touching the damn cold ground, my head glistening in the sun, my shoulders bare to the wind. Now, here are two men. Here are the silvery locks of the slave master and the worn-out brow of old Barney. Master, slave, superior and inferior here, but equals at the bar of God. To be a slave is unnatural. You will soon see severe training is necessary, but to be free is natural. All you have to do to be free is be. Would you tell a bird to fly? It flies of its own free will. Would you tell a lion to roar? It is ferocious of his own nature. Here is a man who borrows his body from the earth. No one needs to tell him he is free. Freedom is built within him. And the slave master, to whom Barney had given the best years of his life, came forward and laid some 40 lashes on him. You're costing me money. I taught you how to manage horses properly, but you won't learn. If you'd learn, then our plantation would prosper. But because you don't, we suffer. And the screams and the yells of old Barney fueled the wrath of the slave master. Have mercy on me, he cried. Have mercy on me, he cried. What is slavery? What is liberty? I know what slavery is in my reality, but in your reality, the count of prison cots are built based on third-grade test scores. Gangs, prostitution, drug addiction, sub-minimum wage, the prison industrial complex are all forms of slavery. But whether in my reality or your reality, this I know. Steel is improved when it's lying on a damp ground. Its rusty razor gets a keener edge when it leaves its dross in the dirt to lie there neglected and alone. In like manner, too, even though humanity be left on the ports of poverty and neglect, we still retain that divine spark. For out of the rags of the meanest cradle may come a great man. And this is a treasure richer than all the wealth of the Orient. After laying some 60 lashes on him, he cut him down. He could hardly stand when the slave master finished with him. And though the child I was, it left in me feelings far, far from peaceful. Barney, you have to get up before the slave master gets back. Come on, Barney. Remember what you taught me? He who is willing to get up can be helped up, but he who is not willing to get up will be left to stay down. Come on, Barney. We eagles, right? Get up. Be not afeared. This owl is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometimes voices that if I then had waked after long sleep would make me sleep again. And then in dreaming, the clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked, I cried to dream again. After the whipping of old Barney, I knew myself to be in the wilderness. Thereafter, I was often awakened at the dawn of day to the most heart-rending shrieks of an old aunt of mine, whom he tied to a high joist and whipped her naked back till it was literally covered in blood. No words, no prayers, no tears could move his iron heart from its gory victim. The louder she screamed, the harder he whipped, and where the blood ran fastest, there he whipped longest. He would whip her to make her scream, and he would whip her to make her hush. Not until overcome with ecstasy did he cease to swing the blood-clotted cowskin. I was quite a child when I witnessed this horrible exhibition, but I well remember it. It was the blood-stained gate, the entrance into the hell of slavery through which I was about to pass. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I was taken to another plantation under a more satisfactory master and mistress. Her name was Miss Sofa, and here I was surrounded by the house slaves. It was a drastic change. House slaves ate well, house slaves spoke well, house slaves dressed well, and I come to find out that Miss Sofa took delight in me because she loved chocolate. See, when she was a child, her mother took delight in making her little chocolate men, and taking delight in such men, she took delight in me as her little chocolate Freddie. Little chocolate Freddie could do no wrong with me. He couldn't even approach me the way he approached his old slave master and mistress, for I was more like a mother to him. He would often overhear me reading the Bible, which sparked in him a desire to read, which is against the law. He simply asked me to teach him to read, and do you know I taught him without hesitation? Over time, kind little chocolate Freddie could read. He could write. He could spell words. When my husband found out about it, he was very angry with me, which you think would have discouraged him, but in fact encouraged him on the power of the written and spoken word. My husband would go on to say, "Oh, it's unruly, do much harm and cause mischief. You give a slave an inch, he's liable to take a foot. You teach that slave how to read, he's going to learn how to write. You teach him how to read the Bible, he'll be running away with himself." It was the first anti-slavery lecture I had ever heard. I now knew that reading and writing was my direct pathway from slavery to freedom. Indeed, this chicken was becoming an eagle. Light had come, knowledge had increased, but the price I would eventually have to pay would be the iron chain around my wrist and the bloody whip on my back. A black child is no threat to any plantation at all, as long as he's a child. But when he becomes a man, he becomes a severe threat. Add reading and education to that, and this slave master could find his whole plantation revolutionized. When I was a teenager, I was taken to another plantation under a horrible slave master whom they called the Negro Breaker. Seeing that I could read, he began beating me every day, which is why I'm out here today. He caught me reading a book about a swan who thought he was an ugly duck. The first time he beat me was after doing the work of 10 men. I fell down in the hot sun. The next time he beat me was after having trouble controlling mules. He laid some 60 lashes on me. He beat me every day, except Sunday. He was a religious man. He felt that day to be holy, and so he wholly kept from whipping on me. Work, work, work was the order of the day. We worked from sun up to sundown. Finally, the desire to read died. The light of being free went away, and behold, this eagle transformed back into a chicken, a man into a brute. All this fear here. I see the master's face reflected in the night sky. We reflect the trees. Even though we're rooted in the earth, our branches are frozen in terrified time. How is it that so few stars could control the black night? How is it that so few men could control us? I ran as far away as I could from the plantation, but when I got out into the woods, I remember they send out dogs to chase after us. So when I saw the water, I stepped into the water so the dogs wouldn't be able to smell my scent. I remember it from a song my grandmother would sing to me. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who's that maiden all dressed in white? God's gonna trouble the water. Looks like a leader of the Israelites. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Look over yonder, and what do I see? God's gonna trouble the water. A holy God is a-coming on me. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. And as I was wading in the water, I began thinking to myself, I was told that God was good, but that he made white people to be slave masters and black people to be slaves. But this went against all my notions of goodness. It wasn't good that I should be separated from my grandmother. It wasn't good that old Bonnie should be beaten so. It wasn't good that I should be beaten so. All was dark here. But the light of truth pierces the darkness. It's not color, but crime. It's not God, but man that's the cause of slavery. This truth led to another truth. What man could make, God could break, and I would be that vessel through which God would work. I began making my way back to the plantation to confront the slave masters singing, I made a vow to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, see what the end's gonna be. If you get to heaven before I do, to see what the end's gonna be. Tell all of my friends I'm coming to see what the end's gonna be. I made a vow to the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end's gonna be. And the manner of the master's face astonished me. He spoke to me as never before. Perhaps my meditation in the water had more virtue in it than I thought. But I'd forgotten. It was Sunday, the Sabbath day, the day of the Master's holiness. All went well until Monday morning, and the smile that graced the Master's face on Sunday wholly disappeared on Monday, and he began beating me into the ridiculous But something in me changed. I suddenly saw myself as powerful and forgot about my fears and remembered my God. He called in other slave masters, and I began to fight against them too. I fought him all day, and I come to find out the only reason why he didn't hang me was because of his reputation of being a slave breaker. Instead, to keep it a secret, he sent me into the city to build ships, and over time I learned a skill, and I was soon able to set myself free and was a hero among the slaves. I was free in my body, but was I free in my mind? A contest of conflict had gone on inside me. One held me a slave, punished for the sins of my skin, and the other held me free, exalted by the grace of God. The contest ended, and I knew I was free, and I began to celebrate with exceeding joy. And one day, after I was free, I was speaking at a convention, and I saw in the audience my former slave master's daughter. When I was finished, she came up to me and she said, "Frederick, I'm so glad to see you. I'm here today because my father is ill. He's been asking for you, and he wants to see you." I told her I have no dealings with that man. "Frederick," she said, "he is your father too." My father? The man who abused me so? I have his blood flowing in my veins. I am not my father's son. But out of respect for you, I will go. And so I did. And here I am. You, sir, are the holder of 2 of my sisters and my only brother. They're recorded on your ledger somewhere. Perhaps you've sold them off to some other human fleshmonger. Whatever happened to them, and whatever happened to my grandmother, for she was more like a mother and a father to me. This deed I intend on doing to you, though horrible it would be on my part, is no less horrible than it was done to my grandmother, my 2 sisters, and my only brother. If it were done when 'tis done, it were well, it were done quickly. If the assassination could conjure up the consequence and catch with his surcease success, that but this blow might be the be-all and end-all here, but here, upon this bank and shoal of time, will jump the life to come. He's here in double trust. First I as his kinsman, and his subject strong, both against the deed. Then as his guest, who should against the murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. Frederick, where are you going with this? To take you off the starry road to freedom and place you back into bondage. How does the king sleep still? Sir, the long and intimate, though by no means friendly relationship that unhappily subsisted between you and myself leads me to hope you'll easily account for the great liberty which I now take in addressing you in this open and public manner. I've known you to be a man of some intelligence and could easily determine the precise estimate to which I entertain of your character. Sir, are you my father? If you are, why did you abuse me so? The very first mental effort on my part was an attempt to solve the mystery. Why am I a slave? When I saw you beating my aunt, cutting the blood out of her neck, and heard her piteous cries, I ran to the corner of a fence and wept and pondered over the mystery. I had gotten through some medium, I know not what, an idea of God, the creator of all mankind, of the black and the white, and that he made blacks to serve whites as slaves. How he could do this and be good, I could not tell. How you could be my father and abuse me, so I cannot tell. I am here to solve the mystery. You do me wrong to take me out of the grave, for thou art a soul of bliss, and I am bound upon the wheel of fire.
Do not mock me, for I am a very foolish, fond old man, fourscore and upward. Not an hour more nor less, and to deal plainly, I feel I'm not in my perfect mind. Methinks I should know you. Yet I am doubtful, for I am mainly ignorant of what place this is, and all the skills I have remembers not these garments. No, I know not where I did lodge last night. Do not laugh at me, for as I am a man, I think this man to be my child. Frederick, be your tears wet? Yes, Faith, I pray, weep not. If you have poison for me, I will drink it, for I know you do not love me, and I do remember you have some cause. Pray you now. Forget and forgive, for I am old and foolish. I shall hold no malice toward you personally, for there is no place in my home you cannot stay if need be. In nothing in my home I would not readily give you, for I shall use you as an example of how mankind ought to treat each other. For I am your fellow man, but not your slave. I do forgive thy rankest fault. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. No one will give you your freedom. Freedom is not given, but taken and realized. You all are planning on migrating north, thinking there you'll experience greater freedom, but I'll assure you there's no more freedom there than here, only a different kind of slavery. For a slave state is a negative state of mind, and a free state is a positive state of mind, and the starting point to freedom are those positive words, those positive thoughts, those positive actions that lead to a free life. I shall continue in the future, as I have in the past, to fight for freedom using my pen, my voice, and my vote to promote the universal, unconditional emancipation of my entire race. Forgiveness is freedom. And covers a multitude of sins. I look at you all and think to myself, what wonder those stars. This discussion is not over. Thank you very much. You all have been a great audience. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We now have time for questions and answers. If you have a question, please raise your hand and Sarah or myself will come to you.
Put my glasses on so I can see and take my wig off.
Hi, my name is Robbie. Great performance. I was just wondering about the origin of you becoming an actor. Did you go into acting and then just find that civil rights and looking at the background of slavery is what you wanted to go into within acting, or did you initially want to go into something with civil rights and the background of slavery and found that acting was the medium to do that?
Oh, that's a very good question. Actually, I got into acting as a little boy a long time ago, way back in the 70s. My father saw a movie, and he rushed home, and he picked me up, and he drove me really fast to see this movie. And I saw the movie, and I came back shouting and punching and kicking, and it was Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon. And from that moment on, I wanted to be like Bruce Lee. And as a little boy, I had trouble reading. And so my father was concerned about it. So one night he put a biography, small biography of Bruce Lee on my desk. And I started to read. And when I read that he was a child actor in Hong Kong, I wanted to be just like that. And so that got me started in acting. And then over time, as far as civil rights characters, I just happened on that actually about 25 years ago, starting with Malcolm X. And it only happened because I was working as a security guard, and the head security person looked at me and he says, "You look like Malcolm X. You ever think about doing a one-man show on Malcolm X?" And that's how it started. And then I kind of got engulfed, and then I kind of entered into a whole universe of characters, and it was always my dream to do Frederick Douglass, so yeah. Yeah. Anyone else?
When you, hi, I'm Gail, and I was wondering when you do different personas, like how does that affect your self-identity? Like, do you feel yourself connecting to others more? And I was just wondering because I'm very interested in acting, so I want to start. And
Oh, okay.
I was always interested in acting because I thought that it would help me with my self-identity. So I just want to hear your story.
Oh, very, very good question, Gail. I would say yes, with two things. One, playing Frederick Douglass and moving into these different characters has been a part of transforming me in a lot of ways, especially Frederick Douglass. I started doing Frederick Douglass before I was a father. And so when I became a father and I did the grandmother, it was very difficult because I could relate it to my little boy at the time. So, but it created even more empathy for the modern problems of what mothers go through with raising children in a difficult situation. And then also too, even playing he had several slave masters, but I kind of generalized it into one character, is recognizing within myself how I can justify certain things that may or may not be right, but I'll rationalize it. And so in all these different characters, or even old Barney, finding a way to laugh to keep from crying, finding joy in very difficult moments. And I think mainly with Frederick Douglass, it was the discovery of overcoming limitation, that he was born into circumstances that wasn't his fault, American slavery, but he didn't allow for it to stop him. He got in touch with something that I believe is in us all, which is a phenomenal, beloved spark, a Priya spark. I say that because Priya told me her name means beloved. So a spark within us that helps us we can utilize our inspiration to recreate our circumstances in our lives. And that's exactly what Frederick Douglass did. He used what he was inspired by, which was, I wasn't able to get into it tonight because of time, but in the story, he comes across more things with reading and how he learned how to read through other people, and the Columbian orator and the Bible and Shakespeare, which I used in the show because he read it all the time. Aesop's Fables and Lord Byron. These inspired Frederick Douglass, and he utilized that inspiration. He was constantly recreating himself throughout his whole life. And then on the flip side of that is acting in general. It's not the art of lying. Acting is the art of telling the truth, the art of being truthful. And so because of that, when you're learning acting techniques, you do become a better you. So to get into acting, to find yourself is a wonderful thing to do. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we'll come back.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Jeremy Gray.
Jeremy.
I read The Life and Times years ago,
Uh-huh.
and the scene where Frederick Douglass fights back,
Yeah.
that's actually, I remember that was actually one of the most amusing parts of the book.
Yeah.
Do you have a longer version of that
I do,
where you
I
do
do.
the whole, because it was very
Yeah.
funny when I
Yeah.
was reading it, because you're
Yeah, I
taking
do.
off when he fights back, and then it's like this whole exchange
Yeah.
is very funny.
Yeah. Yes, Jeremy, there is a longer version of it. You know, I grabbed him by his throat, to which he said, "Do you continue to resist, scoundrel?" "Yes, sir." "Come with might, for you treated me as a brute and like a man." He tried to grapple me to the floor, but little did he know who he was grappling with. Just 24 hours before, he could have blown me away like a leaf in the wind. But not only was I resolved to fight, I found I was good at it. So, yeah, there's a whole longer version of that I do. Yes.
Hi, thank you. Firstly, I had to use the restroom for the first question, so I just want to say I really appreciated that. That was an incredible performance.
Oh, thank you.
But I have a question in regards to, I guess, using Douglas's specific verbiage in My Bondage and My Freedom,
Uh-huh.
like that actual rhetoric there. I'm curious personally with you, in terms of I myself am registered and identify as an American Indian,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm curious how you negotiate or which obligation you feel in terms of a bondage or a freedom in telling and expressing and retelling these histories of American oppression. Like,
Uh-huh.
do you feel more of like an obligation to do so in terms of associating that with sort of a bondage to your colonial and familial and racial ethnic history, or do you feel more of like a freedom to do so? And I realize there's definitely a lot of middle ground in between there, but that's
Sure.
an interesting sort of divide that I'm curious how you feel.
That's a very, very good question. What's your name again? I'm Sophie. Sophie. Oh, that's all right. Sophie, okay. Yeah, I think really and truly it's more of a freedom to be able to express, this way. As far as the bondage part, I think, we've all been amazingly deceived. Just amazingly deceived. Let me see here. Come up on stage for me. Take your jacket off. No, actually, let's see. Well, yeah, come on up. You can leave your jacket on. Leave your jacket on. No, actually, take it off. Take it off. Let's see. Let's have you come up. Come up. Okay. Okay, very good. Very good. All right. Okay, what color is the shirt? Does he look anything close to the color of the shirt? No, absolutely not. What color are my pants? Well, they're black. Like black shoes. Does he or I's skin look anything close to the color of my shoes? Absolutely not. Okay, thank you. Give him a hand. So there's the bondage that we've been fed, and then because of that, you can polarize the two and do all kinds of things. Black is evil, bad, this, that, and the other. White is good, this, and what have you. And so you find yourself in bondage to these ideas that are false. Not only are they false, but you didn't even, they're fed to us. So that's where the bondage is. So now we say it just because we don't know how to say anything else. The black person, the white person, the yellow person, the red person. So I think that's where the bondage is.
More so to do that than free to do that.
I don't feel obligated by any means, mainly because I feel like that it's our histories that's a part of our healing. It's understanding the truth of the past that is a part of what can help us heal. It's when we refuse to look at the truth of the past is where we have a relationship, we're good friends, and we argue, and we never get to the root of what that is. We always deny it. There'll never be any healing between us in relationship. So it is with race and history. If we don't get to the truth of it and really take a look at it and to be honest about it, then, so I feel it's a freedom to share that. And I don't think it's so much of a rewriting of history, it's an excavating of it. Yeah, excavating of history, for me. And then sharing those discoveries of stories and truths that have been buried. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Hello. Thank
Hi.
you for your performance. My name's Tori. I
Tor-
love
Tori?
Tori.
Tori,
with
okay.
a T.
Hey, Tori.
I love Shakespeare, and so I kept hearing and like tapping the pentameter out on my leg, and it felt like a secret, like I was in on. So how did you choose the pieces that you used for that, and what was the inspiration and the connection?
Oh, very good. Well, I use Shakespeare a lot. I use Shakespeare a lot, Tori, because Frederick Douglass, he used it a lot in his speeches, and he read it a lot. You go into his home, and there's this big picture of Othello and Desdemona, and there are other Shakespearean pictures. He was a fan of Shakespeare. He read it all the time, and so I thought it'd be interesting to allow for Shakespeare to come out of the mouths of some of those characters. And so I just chose them based on the emotional moment, the monologues that I felt could fit the emotional moment. Which you all didn't see is in From the Merchant of Venice, there's this character, Shylock, hath not a Jew eyes, but in the show, if I were to do a longer version of it, I go into hath not a black man eyes, hath not a black man hands, organs, senses, dimensions, passions, affections, fed with the same food, hurt by the same weapons, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same summer and winter as a white man is. So there's that. And then I do John Brown, and I go into Henry V with John Brown. And then you heard some of the others, but had a lot of fun with that choice. And so really just finding the monologues that I felt fit the emotional moments is what caused me to do that.
Hi, I'm Andrew.
Hey, Andrew.
I feel like I get to ask Mr. Douglas a question. But
Sure.
Anyways, when I first read the narrative, what really struck me was that at the beginning there's a foreword. And there's a foreword by William Lloyd Garrison, but there's also Wendell Phillips, who was a white abolitionist.
Mhm.
And I always read it as like a seal of approval to say, everybody, Frederick Douglass's experiences are real. You should take them as such. You should give it the recognition that it deserves. You should believe it. Now here it is. And so what that makes me think of now is, especially when you're up here, we had the photo in the back of the slave and his back, like the hieroglyphics of the flesh, and then you took us to the present when you brought up the prison industrial complex, right? That movement from chains or whips to hashtags, handcuffs, it makes me think of the debate about considering yourself a black artist, a black actor versus an artist or an actor, the agendas and the implications that come with each one. So my question is, does that seal still apply? How has it changed? And how would you identify?
Oh, very good, very good. I think that as far as with Frederick Douglass and his first book, his writing, Narrative of American Slave, and William Lloyd Garrison, the relationship that was there was William Lloyd Garrison discovered Frederick Douglass, Anti-Slavery Convention, and became a mentor to him and wanted to help promote him. It was also promoting the abolitionist movement, of which eventually they fell out because Frederick Douglass then started to his own newspaper, you know, what have you. And so it was that very reason Frederick Douglass didn't want a seal of approval anymore. He wanted to be his own man. And so he sort of broke free from that by starting his own newspaper and promoting himself. As far as an artist, I believe that because of the times and the condition that we're living in, there definitely still is an obligation, as she mentioned, to have some sensitivity to the people that I belong to when it comes down to choices. But on the flip side, what overcomes that is the fact that I'm a human being first. And being a human being, I then must find ways and times to break from that, to break past that. We always go through this. I often say that Frederick Douglass was the Jimi Hendrix of his day, and he really was. He was a rock star. But even an artist like Jimi Hendrix felt bound to certain cultural ideas about how he did his music and played the guitar, but he was always trying to break free of that. Frederick Douglass the same way, and then me as an actor the same way too. Playing into some of those, like with Old Barney, kind of held on to some stereotypes, but then Frederick Douglass is the complete opposite of it. As a matter of fact, there's a line in the show I didn't get a chance to do where Frederick Douglass tells William Lloyd Garrison, I'm going to start the North Star. And he says, the North Star, Frederick, this is beyond my comprehension. There's so much about you that's unslave-like. You don't walk like a slave. You don't talk like a slave. You have the ability to read and to write is beyond anyone's comprehension that you're even a Negro. Is there any wonder that people have a hard time believing you ever were a slave? Which is what William Lloyd Garrison thought at that time. So Frederick Douglass broke those norms, and I like to break those norms too. But then there's also that place where, where Frederick Douglass says, if I do forget, if I do not remember the bleeding children of sorrow, then he goes on to speak passionately about what that feels to him. Then this treason, most scandalous and shocking, and would make me a reproach before God and the world, is what Frederick Douglass said. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you again for coming to speak. It was interesting, entertaining, and even inspiring. And I would like to appreciate the question that my colleague just asked right before me. I thought it was really interesting. So I think my question is going to sound a bit more like a follow-up, but given the recounting of Frederick Douglass's history, and especially the story about the eagle telling the chicken, or telling the eagle that's French chicken that he actually is an eagle, and the fact that you work in theater, one of the last industries where race overtly impacts your opportunities, your casting, something we talked about at dinner a little bit before. But how would you say playing these great civil rights leaders has influenced you in your other acting? Because to me it seems like every time you play these great leaders, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, they are like eagles telling you that you are not a chicken, you are an eagle, you can soar. So can you maybe talk about how playing these very accomplished African American leaders has impacted other aspects of your career?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love the story, the eagle and the chicken, because it's universal. I'm sure everybody can think of a time in their life, maybe even now in your life, where you have people surrounding you that are asking you, almost demanding of you to be less than what you are, less than who you are. And finding that space within yourself to recognize that you are who you are, and who you are is phenomenal. And so I grew up with a lot of low self-esteem as a young boy, and it even went into my early adulthood, probably even when I was around about your age. For a variety of different reasons, a lot of low self-esteem. And being able to read and perform characters like Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, where just doing the words of Martin Luther King, you really have to draw deep. As an actor, you got to go deep. I mean, you have to speak from your feet to do Martin Luther King, especially when you're doing those speeches. Also is going deep within my soul to find courage. And then understanding their story, the fact that Martin Luther King spent a lot of his life completely terrified. Because number one, he was brought into the movement. He was made a leader. That wasn't his intention. And then when he saw what was happening, he made the decision to go with it, but he was facing death and death threats every day. So a lot of those pictures where you see Martin Luther King in deep contemplation, we think deep thought. Martin Luther King was deep in depression. So he had to find the strength and the courage. They say the last day that he spoke, it was as if he was preaching the fear out of his own soul, is what one person said. And so when I perform these characters, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King, some of the others, it contributes to, has contributed to my personal development as a person, as a human being, as a father, as a man, and as an actor, but also as an inspirer. I love doing the shows to inspire, and I love to inspire. So that's what it's done for me. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
To what extent do you think Frederick Douglass's success was due to his own internal attributes, relative, or if other slaves were given similar opportunities, such as the opportunity to read, which would be highly improbable for many slaves, do you think that other slaves would have reached that same pinnacle, that same level of success, or was he just an extraordinary man?
That's a very good question. And it's one that I struggle with because the truth of the matter, everybody's born into different circumstances. I, myself, when I was 13 years old, I almost was initiated into a gang, a very dangerous gang in Flint, Michigan. And acting completely raptured me out of it. And then I was raptured into this private school, performing arts school called Interlochen Arts Academy. If y'all heard of Glee, it's kind of like that. Except if you live there, you live there. So I was raptured out. This is right before the crack epidemic too, when crack hit the streets in the 80s. And it just made everybody rich, and it killed a lot of people. And it sent a lot of people to jail. Well, I was taken out of that. So Frederick Douglass, he had his grandmother, who the plantation depended on her. That's how talented she was. They depended on her to fish. They depended on her to grow sweet potatoes and all kinds of stuff. And to the point where she lived in a separate quarter, she was treated like a star. So he had her for a grandmother. And then he had the circumstance, he was made a house slave, and he had an opportunity to learn to read. So there were those opportunities, but then you have those slaves that did not have those opportunities that also did phenomenal things, Harriet Tubman being one of them. So I don't know that it's so much that we're given other things that are greater than other people. I think is what we do with what we have. And I think that if we can find a way to do something with what we have, with what we know, is what pulls us out of our circumstances. So I believe it was what Frederick Douglass did with what was given to him every time that made him Frederick Douglass. The man who started his own newspaper, started a bank, became first black U.S. Marshal, ambassador of the United States to Haiti, Dominican Republic, spoke several languages, played violin, was an advisor to Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, fought for women's rights, just as passionately fought for the abolitionist movement. Frederick Douglass did that. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. I'll ask a question of my own if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious what the process for you of finding Frederick Douglass's voice was like. To the best of my knowledge, there are no audio recordings of him speaking, but I know for somebody for whom oratory skill was so important, I'm wondering what steps you took or what the process was like for you to try to interpret his voice.
It's funny you should say that because it's true. It was frustrating. Like with King and Malcolm X, all this video that I could watch, you can hear their voices, and I can go into their voices because I know what they sound like. With Frederick Douglass, there's none of that. There are descriptions, though, that he had a really powerful voice. But I worried that in my mind, I'm thinking, he has this big baritone voice, but in fact, he talks like this, kind of like how Abraham Lincoln, talked. Because Abraham Lincoln's voice is really shrill, and instead of saying Lincoln, he said Linkhorn. So, and I do Abraham Lincoln too in the show. I didn't have a chance to do tonight, but it said that he had a rich baritone voice, booming voice. They spoke outside, so the sound bounced off of the wood of the trees and carried. And he was a football build, probably 6'1" or 6'2". Women said they loved the passion of his wrath, is the way that they described him. Very fierce, but he also, in the beginning, did his speeches similar to the way I did this show. He performed them. He literally became the characters, and because he could imitate animals and people. He would imitate people when he would debate them, things like that. So I basically just read it and kind of just used my imagination after that. What is the beer drinking Frederick Douglass? What is the Frederick Douglass just sitting down and chilling out, the man, and not, the stern. I think that's where you could fall into a trap as an actor. If you play the stern, the whole time it's just completely stern, is the trap, because that's all you see. But if you can find the vulnerable, the broken, the hurt, the wounded, the funny, Frederick Douglass is what I'm always still striving for. So, yeah.
Very much. Please join me in thanking Mr. Wallace.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.